Hello, everyone. Welcome to our YouTube live channel today here in your Vantage Point. So my name's Nikki. For those of you who don't know me, happy to have all of you here. We're going to be doing some live analysis and specifically talking about swing trading today, which lucky for you, that's exactly what VantagePoint was designed for. So I'm actually really excited to dive into the charts and technical analysis with you all today. So I hope you guys are ready to go with the questions. I'm looking forward to diving into some charts and doing some live analysis with you all as well. So towards the end of our session, I will ask for some ticker symbols. But first, let's go ahead and jump into our VantagePoint software. But before we do that, do me a favor. If anybody is a VantagePoint user, please let me know so that way I know who we have on the other end. If you are using VantagePoint, or maybe this is the first time you're seeing it, or maybe it's not the first time, but you're still not a VantagePoint family member yet, that's okay. We're going to be diving into kind of all things educational when it comes to the technical analysis, specifically as it relates to swing trading. So looking forward to that, but go ahead and let me know in the comment section, and don't worry, I'll keep an eye on those comments as we go through our session today. So go ahead and drop those in now for me while we get our VantagePoint software pulled up. All right, so everyone should be seeing my screen now. I'm just gonna get things set up over here on my end, make sure everybody can hear me loud and clear, right? I just wanna make sure everybody is good to go there. All right, beautiful. Well, good, glad to have you. Peter, thanks for joining us. All right, Chris, you too, Jorge, Rick. Wow, I see a lot of very familiar names in here too. So thanks everybody for joining us during our session today. Thank you, thank you. Jerry, hello, hello. All right, so it looks like we've got kind of a mix of VantagePoint family members, current VantagePoint family members, and maybe those who have never seen VantagePoint before, and that's again, okay. We're gonna take things all the way from the very basics up to the more advanced when it comes to using VantagePoint specifically for swing trading. And in fact, kind of as I mentioned before, all things swing trading. Just keep in mind that everything that we do in VantagePoint is going to be a bit supercharged because of the artificial intelligence. So we've got some really powerful indicators we're going to be looking at. Some of them you might be familiar with. Just know they might look a little different because that VantagePoint technical analysis all has the predictive data already built in to the forecast and the indicators. So very exciting stuff. Let's go ahead and dive on in. Just remember too, I'm not a licensed advisor. So anytime we go through, any hypothetical scenario here in VantagePoint, simulated examples, things of that nature, I'm not giving you any trading advice. In fact, I want you as the trader to really kind of bring your own trade strategy to this incredibly powerful technical tools. And that's really where VantagePoint shines, is it allows you to be the trader, make the decisions as the trader, but it gives you the information you need to make a more informed trade decision. So let's go ahead and dive on in. Now, I'm going to just go ahead and bring up our market conditions here very quickly. You can see you can have saved portfolios in VantagePoint to make things nice and easy to pull up and access wherever you need to. So I've gone ahead and actually just saved a market conditions portfolio because that's one of the first things I want to discuss when it comes to swing trading. It's very important to understand what the current state of the markets are. So that's what we're going to dive into first. We'll actually just take a look at the SPY. The SPY is the ETF that follows the S&P. So we'll take a look at this first to really better understand the context of the current market conditions. All right, because in swing trading, you really don't want to fight the trend. I mean, you can if you want to, right? But I'm sure everyone's heard the old adage, the trend is your friend. Well, understand what the current trend is so you can ride right alongside it and sort of ride the wave, if you will. It makes things a lot easier than trying to paddle against the current. So as we take a look at our VantagePoint software, I'm going to just run through briefly how to utilize each of the indicators here in VantagePoint. Now, these are our base indicators, all right? You'll see probably some optional indicators that are, additional add-ons if you choose to do so, but look at just how powerful the indicators here in VantagePoint are. So we have several different crossovers that are going to help you to see the progression of the trend and also allow you to kind of customize this to your own trade style. If you're a swing trader that likes to only stay in a couple of days, then maybe the shorter term, more sensitive crossover might be best for you. This is a 1-day trend forecast. And the medium term, which I'll just switch to here very quickly, is a view that's good for those traders that like to maybe stay in a couple of days to maybe even a couple of weeks, again, kind of riding that longer bit of trend, and then working down to our longer term crossover, just to give you guys an overview of our more conservative crossover here in the software. Now, for those of you who know VantagePoint, you know we like green for bullish, red for bearish, right? Green for up, red for down. But for those of you who don't, let's walk through that. And I'll just put that kind of in the middle of the road. We'll use the medium term crossover. So in VantagePoint, what we're looking for a bullish signal, the initial bullish signal, is going to be the blue line crossing over the black line. So we see a green trend take place. You see that shading here in green. Now I'm going to turn off my tooltips just so it doesn't keep popping up on us. That was that pop-up window. But we can see here now our trend is green, and I'll in fact even grab my pen here so we can all make sure we're looking at the same area where the blue line crosses over the black line and this trend turns green. That's our initial signal. Think of this as your first kind of point of confirmation, if you will. That's what we like to say here in VantagePoint. We're looking for several points of confirmation because with swing trading, confirmation is going to just equal confidence, right? That's what it should equal for you in your trade decisions. That's what you want as a swing trader, is making confident decisions. So let's do that. Let's move on down to our neural index down here at the bottom. And this neural index is a 2-day predictor of price action. So we want to line that trend up with the predictive neural index. And then we would also look at the predictive differences. These are going to help measure the strength of a trend, which really we want good strength moving behind that initial trend to give us a lot of confidence that it has the power or the force or the energy effort to continue in that current state. So this is what we'd be looking for using our 4 points of confirmation. Now I did say 4, right? So there is what we would call the predictive trading candle. Let me just remove some of these lines here and I'll grab my pen again. And that's what we have right here is our predictive trade candle right here. That's going to tell us the next day's predictive price action. So we'll get to that as we go through some current day analysis, but just so everybody understands how this works. So let's take a look at all 3 of our forecasts. We can look at the short term to see from a short term perspective, we actually have a bullish expectation here, maybe with some slight consolidation. Then we look at our medium term crossover. We can see we have some potential bearishness with some slight consolidation here. And then also the long-term crossover, again, more conservative, telling us that we are still in a potentially established bullish trend. So if you got in way down here and you're managing your position through here, you're managing that swing, you may switch over to a more conservative view after that position has already started to work in your favor. That would be position management. That's a huge piece of swing trading as well. In fact, some of the most successful traders that I've had the pleasure of working with, they will tell you position management oftentimes is where traders make it or break it. So please be aware position management is a huge piece of swing trading and you should manage your positions accordingly. You should also manage your capital accordingly. And of course, nothing is ever guaranteed, but give yourself the advantage of artificial intelligence and use that in your trading to give you more confidence and a huge advantage. So let's go ahead and take a look at our final crossover, which is the triple cross. This triple cross is actually 3 predictive moving averages all built in to the screen at the same time. And wouldn't you know, it's color coordinated because, here at VantagePoint, like I said, we like our red and green. And so we can see our most conservative trend forecast is in fact still bullish. So that tells us overall that we may be experiencing some shorter term consolidation here, but overall, from a more conservative standpoint, we're still bullish, right? So no real sense in, fretting too much over current market conditions. We've actually been on a fairly nice bullish run. Would anybody disagree? Hey, Daniel, I just saw you in here. Thank you. Perfect. All right. Yes. And I do see a couple of questions from maybe some users who haven't or some attendees who haven't used VantagePoint yet. If that's the case, you can find more information at VantagePointForecast.com. So we'll of course drop that in the chat if it isn't already. So make sure that you visit that to find out more information as well. So we're going to dive a little deeper now. As we can see, again, market conditions. This is also a huge piece of being able to identify where you should start looking for opportunities. Is there a need to start shifting your strategy? That's oftentimes one thing in working with so many traders. As our VantagePoint University head trainer, I work with many of our traders one-on-one in live sessions, just like what we're doing here. And sometimes oftentimes really, if we're being honest, the biggest struggle is finding opportunities. And what I found is that many traders aren't using the current market conditions to help guide them to the best types of opportunities that might work well under the current conditions. Market conditions shift, market conditions change, and they adapt. And you have to be able to do that as well. And so understanding the current conditions is a great way to do that. You could do that using the Qs as well. So I'll actually just jump on over to our Qs here very quickly. And this is, of course, the ETF that's going to follow the NASDAQ. So looking at the Qs, we can run through our quick crossovers here. We'll go through the short term, and I like to look at all three, getting as much information as you can from the artificial intelligence. That blue line, in fact, has the power of the artificial intelligence and neural networks already built into it for each of the crossovers. So the data you're looking at here is not just for the Qs. It's actually looking at many different markets behind the scenes. I'll just pull up a quick snapshot so you guys can see that our parent market is the Qs, but the data you're looking at on the chart is so much more. It's in fact the top 31 markets that are at pushing, pulling, and driving the NASDAQ, or the Qs in this case itself. And so understanding what is actually moving a market is where VantagePoint, just far exceeds anything else I have ever seen. Because it has this patent on the intermarket analysis, which you're actually getting kind of a sneak peek here at right now. So let's go ahead and continue our analysis. So of course, we had our crossover back here on the Qs with our current bullish trend. And so we see that happen on 423, green neural index. And of course, predictive differences shooting up as well, green neural index. Check on the crossover also. Moving on to our medium term crossover. Before we do that though, we can see current day is still bullish. So let's also rope in some of that current day. Now we can see bullishness on current day as well, and back here on 424. So we can see that was a day later. That goes towards, just shows you how the crossovers work in progression with each other. And then of course we can go to our long term, giving us a lot more confidence on the current trend and forecast for the markets. And then of course, let's go to our most conservative, which would be the triple cross here. And again, we can see, looking at our 4 points of confirmation here, we have bullishness, 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 and our predictive trade candle is expecting maybe some pausing in that movement as we approach resistance. Now, let me ask this, because this is going to be one of the concepts we review today, especially when it comes to swing trading, is this concept of support and resistance. So who is using support and resistance right now in their current trading, whether it's on VantagePoint or another platform, right? We're going to go over just the conceptual part of using support and resistance in your trade strategies and setups. Everyone's going to use them a little differently, but I want everyone to know what they are and how to utilize them so you can make the best decision for you. So go ahead and type those in the chat too if you are using support and resistance. I'm just keeping an eye on the chat as we go through. So thanks everybody for your comments. Okay, good. So most of you are using support and resistance. That's good to hear. So when we see things like price, and price, of course, are the green and red candles. That's what I'm denoting as price action at this point. I'm using the traditional candles here on the chart to denote price. So we can see price, this red candle here from yesterday, bumping right up against that level of verified resistance. Now, we see that resistance that was established back here on 521. Now, I know that because, well, VantagePoint points it out with this wonderful red arrow here, so it's hard to miss that we had a resistance level established right here on 521. So what we see here then is a jump and a test of a resistance, a failure, and then coming back up to retest that resistance as well. So keep that in mind, because as we approach resistance, there's the ability to potentially break out or break through a level of resistance or support, right? If you trade to the downside as well, which we can see, we would just invert and use the red instead of the green. But when we're bouncing up or pushing up against a level of resistance, this is almost like a ceiling for price. So the question is, at this ceiling, right, are we going to be able to find the stairs to break through, right? Or are we going to continue on down to the basement? So we need to better understand things like momentum in that case to help us better see what the expectation of price would be. Because these support and resistance levels, again, resistance in red denoted by the red arrow, and then green is support denoted by the green arrow. Not sure if you guys can see that one right there. You can definitely see this one, and certainly this one as well. So we in fact have 3 zones of support right here. 1, 2, 3. You can see they're shaded. I would call this zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. And the deeper we get into support or the deeper we get into resistance, the harder it is to break through. All right, think of them like levels to a video game. The deeper you go into the level, the harder it is to beat, right? Well, that's support and resistance here. So this is a concept that we can use to find things like breakout trends, right? And in fact, let's just look at a breakout trend right here. We can see a breakout trend that happened right here where we were able to break through, meaning price was able to break through a level of resistance, and boom, it shot up like a rocket, right? Who wants to identify trends like that? Because that's the idea of swing trading, is being very strategic about your opportunity selection to find trades that are going to last anywhere from like 1 to 10 days. So that's kind of typical swing trading. Now you could stay in a little longer if the trend is lasting and you have a good position, and you're basically staying in as long as the trend is working for you. So there are several different concepts to swing trading, and resistance and support is one of those. So let's take a look at some of our other markets for today. Perfect. All right, guys, so we're just rocking and rolling. Looks like a lot of you are interested in learning a little bit more about support and resistance. So the concept of support and resistance, you may want to trade, look for opportunities like those breakouts, or maybe you don't like trading up against support or resistance. Either way, that's fine. You can find opportunities like that in VantagePoint. So let's go ahead and open up another chart. I'm just going to pull up one that we can utilize together. Let's just see here. We'll use CCJ as an example. This should pull up, and here we go. So let's take a look at a couple of different scenarios and swing trading kind of strategies. And let me tell you, the secret to mastering swing trading is right here in VantagePoint. I wish that I could say that there was, some secret recipe, but the recipe that includes the predictive software in VantagePoint, honestly, is what's going to give you the biggest advantage. That's the secret. It's the neural networks and the power of the artificial intelligence working alongside the technical indicators that's going to give you the power you need to come up with a recipe for success for yourself. right? So that's the power behind the VantagePoint software, and utilizing not only its ease of use, but also the powerful technology that comes along with that, to see ahead of the markets and get ahead of these trends rather than always feeling like you're trying to run and catch up. So let's take a look at a couple of trends here together, and then I will ask for some ticker symbols after that. So as we can see here, well, on 415, we have a bullish crossover on CCJ. So this would be sort of the initial setup here that you're looking for when it comes to a swing trade. Now, if you are a little bit more of an early entry type of trader, you might use the short-term crossover, and that's okay. You can use the short-term crossover. That crossover is designed to help you better time your entries. This is a timing and directional indicator here that we see here with our crossover. So using the crossover and then confirming the fact that we have bullish price action expected as well. So boom, check that crossover. Boom, you've got your neural index, and then your predictive differences are all coming up. Remember, we talked about strength. So this strength down here is telling you that not only is it maybe the right time for a bullish expectation on this market, but it's also confirming with the price action or the predictive price action, because remember that neural index is predictive as well. And then the strength behind that predicted trend is also expecting bullishness as well. So we have timing, we have price, we have strength. And then, of course, we can also look at the predictive range as well. So here would be an initial bullish swing trade setup. Looking at this hypothetical example here, if you were to enter into that position, then you would simply manage that position on forward. If you were managing that position on forward, that's when you may select or switch over to a different crossover, looking at a longer term expectation, or maybe you're a very short-term trader and that's okay. Maybe you have some profit targets that you want to hit. And if that's the case, then maybe you're staying in until you hit resistance right here, right? Or maybe you're setting a profit target, all right? And so if that's the case, then what is your exit strategy? Let me ask this, because I find sometimes traders don't always have a strategy. Like, they've got a strategy to get in, but what is the strategy to get out? So do you have a position management strategy? Do you have a position management protocol? What is your exit strategy? Are you thinking about the trade in 3 separate phases, looking at the entry and then position management and then exits? If not, food for thought, you may want to ask yourself, how comfortable are you? And at what risk tolerances are you okay staying in a trade? What point do you say, nope, that's it, I'm going to take profits, I'm out, I'm good with that profit taking potential? Or do you want more and want to stay in longer? So kind of what type of trader are you? And that's a key point that you need to make sure you understand your own particular strategies and setups. The beautiful thing is that you can use the predictive indicators to make that very clear and take the emotion out of it as well. So if you are a shorter term swing trader, maybe you get in at the shorter term crossover. Again, this is just an example, of course, as we go through, making sure that we have good strength here. And then your position management strategy may shift over to a medium or even a long-term crossover once we see that. And then we can see we're bullish all the way through, riding all the way up, even as we hit these levels of resistance. So let's talk about a level of resistance that we hit previously. I'm going to do something pretty cool. We can actually back this up a little bit so we can see what the previous resistance was. Right? So remember, we said when we saw that short-term crossover, are you coming up and then hitting resistance and taking profits? Or once you see price action coming up to hit a level of resistance, and again, this big red box here, this is all resistance right here, all right? So sorry, my drawing skills, I'll definitely stick to my technical analysis day job here, because my drawing skills are leave something to be desired, but that's okay. That's why VantagePoint draws these nice, pretty straight lines and color codes everything for us, right? So as we see the resistance level here, once we're in our trend, okay, we are looking to see whether or not we're likely to break through that resistance. Now, something interestingly enough, and I don't know if anybody else has picked up on that, but look at your predicted differences. Look at your strength down here. Do you see how the short-term strength is coming down? That tells us that at this resistance level, the likelihood of being able to push through that resistance is going to be pretty tough. So the higher probability is that we would likely fail off of that resistance level, which lo and behold is exactly what happens. We fail. We fail to break through that resistance level. So the opportunity for a breakout trend to the upside here, the VantagePoint software is already telling you, hey, we don't have enough strength to do that. We're banging our head up against the ceiling, saying, ouch, oh, that really hurt, and then coming on back down for a potential retest. So as we bang our head on the ceiling, we haven't quite found the steps up out of the basement yet, right? So we're coming back down, retesting a new level of support here, and then bouncing on back up to retest resistance. So let's take a look here as price approaches resistance. As price approaches resistance here, let's take a look and see what our predictive differences are doing. Does anyone see how these are all trending up now instead of down? So now we have not only a bullish crossover, but we have a bullish neural index, and our predictive differences are coming up against resistance. This is where you can identify a higher probability of looking for that breakout type of trend. And lo and behold, look at what happens. We break through resistance here and come all the way up, giving us a nice little profit along the way, right? So if you don't trade up against support and resistance, or maybe you're not using support or resistance, maybe you haven't thought about support or resistance in the way that it can really help you identify these breakouts or retests. Hopefully this is going to help you in your trade setup to give you a little bit more knowledge to make a little bit more informed trade decision next time. So let's see if we break through resistance, right? And expecting a bullish continuation trend. Let me just grab my mouse and I'm going to remove some of my drawings here, the fun stuff, right? And stretch on out, we can see our breakout through that resistance level, which just keeps on going. Now, again, we had a little trouble getting through resistance here, right? And this resistance level was established back at this red arrow, right? And that's 324. So on 324, we had another resistance, which did impact price. We can see that pausing in price action right up against that resistance. Price doesn't usually just pause for no reason. It's usually up against a key level. So if you've ever wondered why price is just kind of stalling out at a point, you should look at your support and resistance to see whether or not we're up against those levels. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be up against a support or resistance or some sort of key level that's just pausing price right where it's at, saying, hang on, we don't know if we want to go any further just yet, right? So as we can see, price action here hits this resistance level. We don't have the strength down here to yet push us through. Now, of course, I'm also looking at earnings here. This little flag here does tell us that we do have earnings during that time period. So we're in a little bit of a caution zone anyways, right? Anytime that there's earnings, you always do want to be a little bit more cautious. Earnings is always a high risk, high reward. We've done some trainings on that in the past here in our YouTube live sessions, but we'll be a little bit more cautious because of earnings here. But when we see price action jump up and close above that resistance level with strength, now look at that. I'm going to just grab our crosshairs here. And as we break that resistance level and we start to see strength coming into that trend here with our predictive differences, again, bullish neural index, breaking of that resistance level, we can now see we have the higher probability of a potential breakout trend. Further confirmation when we have 2 consecutive closes above a resistance level verifies that we have a breakthrough of that resistance. So I'll repeat that again. That's a very important concept, right? 2 consecutive closes above. That means 2 days right in a row. We can see 2 days right in a row confirms that we have a potential for a breakout or that we've officially broken that level of resistance. That's 2 closes, all right? And that's the top of the body of the candle here and here to see that we've broken through that resistance on into the breakout. So let's see how this transpires. Again, just kind of pushing our way forward so you guys can see how you would be looking at that in real-time analysis. So as we take a look here at our resistance level, we hit resistance, right? The resistance is established and we have our predictive differences coming on down. With the predictive differences coming down up against a resistance, who knows what the likelihood of breaking out through that resistance level is? Probably not very high, right? This is why we bounce off of resistance. This is why support and resistance are oftentimes called pivot points, because it causes this pivot or shift in the trend. And so looking at support and resistance is a key piece of swing trading. Now, again, as we come back up to retest that resistance level, what are the predictive differences showing us? Here, we have strength coming into that trend, telling us that, hey, we do have a high probability of continuing on through that resistance. We have enough strength to really push us through. Then coming on even further to our current day analysis, we now have 2 closes above. So really, really powerful use of support and resistance there to identify potential breakout trends. Now, again, looking at your predictive differences is always going to be key as well, because here we're at resistance here, and we came up to test resistance on 527, and we're starting to see a little bit of weakness. So some stalling of price action before potentially coming back up to retest resistance could be a possibility coming up here in the near future. So now that you better understand support and resistance, who's going to start incorporating that into their analysis before they enter into a position and when they're managing a position? That's what I want to know. Did that help you to have a clearer picture of what's expected to happen in the trend? All right, let's jump on into another example of how to utilize swing trades, right? So another example that we could look at here, and let me just grab another chart. And I tell you what, I'll go ahead and let you guys. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. That's very good. I'm glad that it's helping. Support and resistance is oftentimes something that's very overlooked, right? But it's a very, very important concept, especially in swing trading. So it's a really great strategic indicator to use for not only breakouts, but also bounces off of support and resistance, looking for reversions or buy points too, because if we have a trend that pulls back to a level of support, then you could see a bounce off of that if you have strength coming in. So let's take a look at a couple of examples there as well. In fact, I'll save CW for one moment because I want to jump over to Intuit, which actually had something like that happen very recently. So let's jump into an area where we hit resistance and we reverted back down to a support level, right? So this is where we can see a jump up, right? And then a pullback down to a support level. Now, this did have earnings, right? So again, we do want to be cautious. Earnings can be, again, high risk, high reward scenario, but we can see where price bounces off of that support and then continues up to the next resistance level. All right, so we can see that bounce off of support and a continuation. Bounce off of support, continuation, bounce, continuation, bounce, continuation. And that's the idea of that shorter term swing, looking for those reversions back to the mean and then a continuation of the trend. Do we have any other? I'll let you guys go ahead and start typing in your ticker symbols now. And then we can even look for some scans or create some scans together that would help find those types of opportunities as well. So those opportunities where we're looking for a breakout through resistance, or maybe you're looking for a failure off of resistance where it's reverted back down to that support level. So if you notice here, even on Carvana, we can see we came up and tested resistance. We bounced back down to a support level and then continued on our current trajectory or current trend, which was bullish. Now, let me show you something also really cool about the VantagePoint software is if you use the triple cross too, you can see when price gets really far away from that darker level, that darker key level is the T cross long, it tends to revert back down. So you can also use that as a measure of extreme. When price is really far away from that level and you start to see some weakness coming in, we may have that reversion back down. All right, so again, hitting up against that resistance, okay, when we're really far away from the T-cross long, and then coming on back down to test a level of support before bouncing on back up to try to break through that support level. And we can see we had 2 closes above that resistance level, signifying the official break of that resistance as well. All right, so I should have known someone was going to put in Tesla. Of course, Mike, no problem. I should just have that pulled up. You know, I think the last session I just had that pulled up automatically because I knew someone was going to ask for it. NVIDIA is also another good example as well. So thank you for that. All right. So perfect. I'll go ahead and get those pulled up, and I'll pull up additional ones as they come in. Let's just get those so I don't lose any of them in the chat. When so many responses start coming in, I can get a little backed up and I can lose them. So doesn't look like I have ARVN unless that was maybe a different ticker symbol. So I'll let you correct that if that's the case. Let's see. Okay, perfect. Keep in mind, VantagePoint's accuracy on these forecasts is incredible. So, okay, perfect, PH, you got it. So we're going to have a minimum accuracy, and actually our accuracy rating is up to 84.7%. So it's pretty incredible, the accuracy of the forecast that you're actually seeing live here in the software. So let's take a look at Tesla together, shall we? Tesla is always a fun one. So what are we seeing here on Tesla? I'm gonna ask for some comments. I'd love to know what you guys are thinking about Tesla right now. And we'll, of course, we're gonna dive into the analysis as well. All right, Mark, sure, no problem. We'll get that pulled up as well. Thank you for the response. Perfect. All right. As I pull up that chart, okay, good. That's probably enough. I think we'll have enough time to go through those sort of in-depth analysis and walk through some of those swing type strategy and scenarios here with the breakouts and also the pullbacks, reversions to the means. We've got a couple of those happening here. I can already see on Tesla. So as we take a look at Tesla, all right, so as we switch over, I always like to look, again, I'm just going through this sort of systematic process here. It's really nice because you can create this process for yourself that kind of guides you to the trend, that guides you to a decision for yourself. So you don't have to wonder or second guess yourself. You're looking at the data, you're looking at the analysis, and it's backed by the AI, backed by the neural networks. And again, we have that accuracy. So with the accuracy here in VantagePoint, you can make trade decisions with a lot of confidence and a lot less emotion. So you can trade based on what you see rather than what you feel. And we all know the markets don't really care about how we feel. That's unfortunate, but they don't, right? And so why not just look at the data? Why not use what's been proven time and time again for, almost 5 decades now? So looking at the VantagePoint, we can see where we have some swing opportunities using that shorter term crossover. Again, looking at the points of confirmation, we do have a crossover here, check. We've got neural index here, check. And we've got our predictive differences, check as well. So boom, quick analysis, quick, easy analysis. The other thing here that we didn't look at yet as far as entries is your resistance. How far are we to that resistance level? So we can now see that resistance level right here is, boom, right up here, which means we've got some room to run before sort of banging our head on the floor or the ceiling there, right? So if we take a look and just see from that crossover, and I'm just gonna look at this from close to that resistance level to just get a quick assessment of the potential here for that trend. If you're not assessing potential, profit potential before you enter into a trend, you might be missing out on a very key piece of your trade strategy. What is your expectation? Kind of just going through life, right? If you don't have an expectation going into anything, how do you know whether it's successful or not? And so going into your trades, knowing what your expectation is, knowing what your trade plan is very, very important. So here we have our profit calc tool that will actually calculate that trend line for you. And you just click and drag and drop it here, and then we can get a quick calculation on what the potential is from that crossover point to the resistance level as well. And so if you were only expecting this trend to run up to that resistance level, would that be enough for you to risk your money on that? And at, almost 10%, at 9.44% potentially, I don't know if anybody wouldn't take that, but that's of course going to be up to you as the trader. And so you can really get a good quick assessment on whether or not you would expect some higher profit potentials from these moves. And then of course, if it does work out and it breaks through resistance, here again, we have this break of resistance, but we're up against very heavy resistance here. And I'm actually going to just back this out a little bit, because I want you guys to see if you were analyzing this like you were real time, right? So we have this very heavy resistance right here, and we can see that the predictive differences, what we call them, those strength indicators, right? They are in fact showing you, especially the short term, is saying, whoa, watch out here, right? We've got some heavy resistance and not a lot of strength coming into that. So you may want to be very careful here, very cautious. If you are at a profit, maybe you exit and take those profits. Maybe that's part of your exit strategy. Maybe you put in some tighter stop losses, using stop losses to better manage that position, manage and protect your profits. That's going to be another key piece there for you as well. And so there are many different strategies to help manage and protect those profits. And then, as we can see, we push through to the next couple of days. Again, we'll just reveal this kind of real time together as we start to see this. And we don't go anywhere, right? Tesla sort of stalls out at this level of resistance. And is anyone that surprised? At least they shouldn't be, because look at your predictive differences. Your measures of strength are saying, hang on, wait a minute, there's not a lot of strength here. So without the strength to push through those resistance levels, it's going to be very, very difficult, a little riskier, right? And so here then we of course see our crossover as well to the downside, telling you, okay, at this point, maybe you should think about taking profits if that is your signal, or if you are in position management, maybe you're maybe you're taking a small portion of profits and letting the rest run. There's this idea of scaling in and scaling out of a position. Who does scale in and scale out as part of their position management strategy and profit taking? Let me know that in the chat, just so I can see kind of who understands that concept, and maybe if it's something we should go over in another session as well. So let's keep continuing this reveal of our trend as we push forward on the chart. So looking at Tesla, we can see we failed off of that resistance level. It's one of my favorite things to do, just to see, wow, the accuracy of the software here. And then again, coming back up to retest that resistance. Now, again, we reverted back and hit that support level. Okay, so if you exited out over here, great. You got a great swing. You probably were at profits, hopefully, if you took your exit at the right time. So looking at this hypothetical scenario, and again, I'm not giving anybody trading advice here, but just looking solely at the technical analysis to look at the signals, what would you do here if you see those points of confirmation, right? A bounce off of a previous support level, because support and resistance works both ways, right? So with support, with price hitting support, the question is, are we able to break through that support? And we see very quickly that the short term is starting to shift back to the upside, telling us that we've got some pretty strong support here, that it's going to be tough for price action to get through unless we have a lot of bearish strength. And we just don't have that. We have the short term starting to move back to the upside, indicating a potential bounce off of that support level, right? And then lo and behold, of course, we do have a crossover Again, confirm with your neural index and then your predictive differences, all three trending up as well. So giving us another potential setup here for that shorter term swing right here on 5/8. Now, as we approach that resistance, who can tell me what our predictive differences are doing? They're going up, aren't they, right? No surprise there, because look at what price action does after. Keep in mind, you're getting these updates the night before, right? So these updates are coming to you so you can proactively prepare for the next trade day. There's no second guessing. There's no waiting, to see, who's going to say what on the news. It's this proactive approach that allows you to remove some of the emotion and prepare your trade strategy ahead of time so that way you know if you need to adapt or not. You already have a plan of action, whether or not this goes up and breaks resistance or whether or not you need to be better protected from a profit standpoint as well. So being able to see this information ahead of time is key in any analysis, because a proactive is definitely better than reactive, especially when it comes to the markets. Every single time. So again, as we approach the resistance level, do we have enough strength to push through? And we can see we're just kind of stepping on the accelerator at this point, pushing on through up to our next potential resistance level. So when we look at the possibility of breakout trends for a swing, when we have a crossover with our predictive differences coming up, that bounce off of support as well, this can really help you better understand the probability of success here. And that's really what trading is about. It's about stacking the odds in your favor, right? So if you can stack the odds in your favor, then why not, right? Why hurt yourself by trying to do the analysis on your own? That's just humanly impossible, because remember, we're not just looking at Tesla here. We're looking at the markets that are impacting Tesla and how they're impacting Tesla as well. I'll just pull that up very quickly so you can see. Again, Tesla's our parent market here, but don't forget all of the information that goes into the chart that we're actually evaluating. All of that information is jam-packed into that really powerful blue predictive moving average, that blue line. So whether or not you're looking at the short, the medium, the long, or the triple cross, you've got predictive data at your fingertips. All right, so we can see again, even on the medium term cross, we did have a confirmed crossover here on the medium term coming on up, giving us bullish signals across the board really quick. Check, check, check. You've got confirmation. You've got confidence, hopefully, to take the trade that's best for you as the trader. All right, so let's continue on. So we'll keep on working through this analysis. And how do you guys like the look back as we walk through that together so you can see that scenario play out? Give me some feedback, because I personally love to walk back through so you guys can see how that real time you would be getting that information. But always like to know whether, we should look at other types of trends, or what's most important to you all. That's the purpose of these sessions, is to make sure that we're providing education on not only the technical analysis, but how to incorporate true artificial intelligence into that technical analysis so you can use it in your trading as well. And if you need more information on that, I know we've dropped it in the chat, but it's VantagePointForecast.com, and certainly don't forget to like and subscribe as well. So as we progress through this trend, again, our next resistance level was on 520, and we can see we hit resistance, failed off of that resistance level. Hopefully at this point, no one's surprised, because we had our strength kind of pumping the brakes here as we hit up against that resistance level. And then once we hit this level of support, right, then we started to see strength coming back in for a retest of that resistance level as well. So let me see, I just got some questions coming in I don't want to miss, and I just saw a bunch of them coming in. Stop loss, yep, absolutely. So you could also use your stop losses as well. Whenever you're up against resistance, we know that that's higher risk. So maybe from a position management standpoint, your strategy is to put in a tighter stop loss whenever you see increased risk. And that's exactly what we're at when we're up against a level of resistance, is increased risk. So understand this level of risk tolerance. What are your risk tolerances and what are your risk assessment and strategies around a higher risk scenario? Doesn't mean you should be afraid of it, right? You're not afraid of it if you know it's coming. And that's the advantage of being proactive. You don't have to be scared. You can now strategize around some of those higher risk scenarios so you can do what's best for your trade strategy and your setup. All right. So as we look at current, we can see that Tesla, we are up against resistance. We did close 2 days above that resistance level. So the question is, will we close again above that resistance level? And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe Tesla closed above that resistance level. So even though we had a little bit of stalling as we hit the next resistance level, keep in mind this red shading up here is another level of resistance. So we did break one resistance level, right? But now will we be able to break the next? All right. And I think we closed at 358, somewhere around there today. So just above that resistance level, you can either put your crosshairs there to find the resistance, or you can put your crosshairs on that arrow and look at the high. So our high was 354.99. So that's where the resistance is 354.99 there. So we clearly closed above that resistance. The cool thing about a breakout above a resistance level is that old resistance will now become new support. So now we potentially have a support level bolstering up price above this old resistance level. Now, a little bit of caution here just because we do see the predictive differences trending not up, right? We've got 1 going up, 2 going down. So 2 out of 3 going down, we may experience some shorter term sort of pushback from that upper resistance level up near the 366 level. So we want to exercise a little bit of caution, but when the software updates tonight at 6:30, we'll be able to see what the projected strength would be for tomorrow. And so we don't have to wait until tomorrow to find out. We can proactively prepare for that tonight at 6:30 when the software updates. So really, really powerful analysis here coming to you before market open tomorrow. You don't have to wait to make that decision. Now, NVIDIA, all right, NVIDIA, again, looking at sort of this pullback scenario where we can see we had a recent failure off of resistance, pulled all the way back to this support level. Now, here's what's really awesome about things like the triple cross. And I'm going to switch over to our triple cross view, again, being the more conservative view here. But remember what we said, when price gets really far away from the darker blue line here, this T-cross long line, this is a key level. So it oftentimes will try to revert back to that mean. Now this dark blue line is a predictive moving average. It's actually an 18-day predictive exponential moving average. So a really, really powerful key level here. And when we see this level and price remaining above that level, that can tell us a lot about the current state of the trend. So we're still in this bullish trend, but did we see a bit of a pullback here recently? And we did, right? We can see that price got really far away and then tried to revert back down to that key level. And so anytime that you're at an extreme, right, it's a higher risk scenario, just in life in general, right? Anytime you're at an extreme, you have a long way to go back to get to the average. And so that's what happens here with NVIDIA. We can see we get really far overextended from that mean using the T-cross long level and revert back down before creating a new level of support. So we hit resistance. Anybody want to tell me why we weren't able to push through that resistance? What would you expected to happen here with those predictive differences trending down? I am hoping everybody says failure off of resistance, right? Because that's what our training has been about today. So as we shift down, right, then we see this really great bounce off of support up to the next resistance level. Now, again, we did have earnings. So yes, that is going to factor in. Again, earnings can skew things from a technical analysis standpoint. So you need to be a little bit more cautious around earnings, but we did see strength coming back in as we bounced off of that support level as well. So we can see these pivot points in the trend really do provide levels where we're expected to accelerate through, right? And we have enough momentum and push and strength to push through those levels of resistance like what we see back here, right? We can see at this point of resistance, this resistance, guys, this was established way, way, way back here. All right, this was March. All right, this resistance was here in March, so we saw that coming ahead of time. No need to be worried about it, right? Because we can see as we approach that resistance, we have strength coming into that trend. We are in a confirmed bullish trend from our triple cross standpoint. And even if we switch over to our medium term cross, this trend was remaining bullish all throughout. Even against that resistance level, you still had confirmation of a bullish trend. So when it comes to entries, position management, even exit scenarios, use the power of artificial intelligence. Use the power here in VantagePoint to help guide you through those different phases of the trade. Know what the market conditions are, know where these key pivot points are, and, do yourself a favor and just listen to the technical analysis, right? I know we like to think we know what's going to happen, but in reality, the technical indicators tell us a lot more about the trend than we know ourselves, because it's looking at the data, it's looking at the power behind the inner market analysis. So again, do yourself a favor, use the artificial intelligence and let that be your guide through the markets so you can start trading, using the incredible power of VantagePoint. Again, if you need more information on that, let us know. But again, just kind of to quickly recap, make sure that you're using the indicators for timing, price confirmation. If you're looking for swings, make sure that you're evaluating some things like support and resistance to help you identify those critical pivot points within a trade and whether or not you have the potential to push through with price action or whether or not you're likely to fail off of that level. That can help guide you through more precise entries, better position management, and then also help you manage those exits as well. So I hope everyone enjoyed the session today. Again, if you did, please do me a favor and just hit like and subscribe so we can keep providing these great trainings for everyone out there. Whether you're using VantagePoint or not, these concepts of support and resistance and how to use this in your swing trade can be life-changing. So, we strive to empower traders daily here, and I hope that this training empowered you to be a better and more confident trader yourself. So everyone have a fantastic rest of your week and a good weekend ahead as we have come into Friday. And we'll see you guys on the next training. Thanks so much.